and you'll be able to see the circulations of them on the satellite picture along the eastern seaboard. And one very definitely has some tropical characteristics, and the other one has been producing tropical type rains. Let's focus in now. This is a visible loop, so it doesn't loop for that long, but you'll be able to see one circulation here. See that twisting? And then a second circulation here. This is the one that looks like it's got some kind of tropical characteristics. You can almost see an eye wall or a very closed circulation center. And there have been wind gusts reported by buoys east of the Maryland shore of 86 miles an hour. This separate system, and look at the separate area between them. They're actually fairly clear skies and pretty nice day here over the Delmarva Peninsula, at least earlier on. This storm's produced 8 inches plus rain in parts of mid-state South Carolina, and they've had some serious flooding here. Now, these two are kind of dancing around each other. You saw that loop. This one kind of looping this way and this one coming back this way. The question is around an upper-level low-pressure system which is forming in the Middle Atlantic region. Question is, does this storm come right into southern New England or eastern Long Island? If it does, there could be hurricane-force wind gusts and some real damage in here this evening. Or does it kind of get shunted up toward Newfoundland and eastern Canada? And I think this is kind of a real threat to the northeast corner of the United States. This storm system will probably slowly meander northward, while this one weakens during the day tomorrow. And the question is how much cloud cover and how much rain gets thrown back by both of those systems across Pennsylvania. Here's what the radar map shows. Much of the country is dry and much of the country incredibly warm. Show you that when we look at the regular weather map. It looks like this area of rain, you can see the heavy rains, and that's one thing I think we can say about both of these. The heavy rains are going to be concentrated coastal areas, and if there's any part of Pennsylvania that gets over a half an inch of rain, it'll be near the New Jersey border. Out west, near the Ohio border, probably no rain whatsoever, and the weekend actually will be very nice. All right, here's what it looks like then on the regular weather map. Now, this is not really officially a tropical storm. It's a very, very intense low. I kind of put it on there just to make a point. And actually, if you look in the hole of the symbol there, you can see a clear patch indicating there may very well be some kind of an eye or almost an eye or some kind of a closed circulation. At any rate, there will be fierce winds and very heavy rains along the lower New England coast and maybe back into Connecticut or even parts of Long Island close to the New York City area. And this storm is also producing 50, 60 mile an hour winds right along the Carolina coast. In between, it's kind of tranquil, and that makes the forecast real tricky. Okay, look at that. 46 degrees in International Falls was a record. You know, the normal high here, this is tomorrow evening's weather map, the normal high.
Poinsettias,
yeah.
Poinsettias, however you say it.
You say poinsettia, I say poinsettia.
They're beautiful.
You say banana, well, whatever. Yeah, we're all set up here. Ours Floral has us all spruced up for Christmas this year. Look at this, and a black tie and everything.
Hey, Rich. Hey, Val. Yeah, I'm all spruced up. Thanks to our friends at Metallo's and Dunmore, they decided if I'm going to do this piano recital bit, that I better at least look the part. And I'm standing next to my instructor, Lynn Harris. Well, you know, we're getting down to the crunch time now. Lynn, what do you think?
Well, it's getting close now, Barry. Satellite at exactly the same time. And you can see that this thing is just moving right in on us. You see that blue there, of course, is precipitation coming right in on those easterly winds. We have a couple of nor'easters, actually, 2 centers. Better 2 than 1 big one, and that's why we're probably not going to get as bad as we could have gotten. This precipitation moving our way right now is not going to get here. The clouds are moving on in here, and the precipitation will move into maybe southeastern New York, just south of Albany, and that'll be about it. And by the time you get to tomorrow afternoon, the western sections, which will get some clouds tonight, will be in the clear already. And by the time you get to tomorrow night, we'll be heavy. That'll dissipate. Double-barreled storms, one of them off the Carolina coast, another one just south of Long Island right now. They're going to move off in a northeasterly direction. They're going to buffet the coastal areas, though, with 25-mile-an-hour winds right now on the Delaware coast, and it'll get even bigger there. And they're going to have some problems with coastal flooding and rains, as we said.
I think blobs in the eastern half of the country, one just off the New Jersey coast, another one now off the South Carolina, North Carolina coast. This has been hammering the Carolinas. Myrtle Beach inundated with water, some places seeing 8 to 10 inches of rain, heavy surf.
Weather you can always turn to for accurate, dependable weather forecasts 24 hours a day.
storm over the Atlantic Ocean threatens to cause problems along the coast. What will the impact be where you are? The latest on the storm coming up.
And again, we look at the situation developing on the eastern seaboard, a double-barrel major low-pressure area. And this low, both of them are very formidable. We'll have to deal with both of them over the next 12 to 24 hours. The initial low coming up the coast, and with that pounding the Cape Cod area, we've had winds on the outer islands out by Nantucket as high as 78 miles per hour during the hour. And it looks like, believe it or not, this system is kind of backing its way on in off towards the northwest. The radar very, very impressive, and it looks like there's going to be some serious beach erosion, and there will be more flooding at the times of high tide. And the tides, by the way, could be running 5, maybe 6 feet above normal. The only saving grace is that we're not at a new moon nor a full moon. Here we are sitting between the full and I think the first or the last quarter. All right, down south, more rain. Not as much wind, and we've had beach erosion, but not as violent a wind as, say, up around Nantucket. But nonetheless, we've had 7 inches of rain around Florence, South Carolina today. Middle part of the country doesn't look bad, but it's kind of gloomy out here around Chicago. There's yet another low, by the way. This low around Indiana is going to dip on down, and everything downstream, if you will. This low and this low will kind of dumbbell, so the one is coming in towards the eastern tip of Long Island now. The other low is probably going to lift on due north and still kind of strafe the coast with more in the way of heavy rainfall over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours. All right, let's check out our evening weather now. And our mentioned, look what's happened already. We've had a wind gust to 83 miles per hour. This buoy is about on a latitude of Ocean City and on a longitude of about Martha's Vineyard. And that was taken about 3 hours ago, 83 mile per hour gust. As we've also talked about, we've had 33-foot seas in the past hour coming in from Nantucket Shoals. That's about 40 miles out to the southeast of the tip of Nantucket. And now we've had winds as high as 78 miles per hour around the Nantucket Island area itself. Again, these lows are going to kind of dumbbell around. One's going to head northwestward, the other one eventually moving on up the coast. So not going to be a very pretty Christmas Eve either way you cut it. There again is your one low heading northwest. The other low itself is still breeding over the Gulf Stream waters, and that'll begin to get very strong as well as it tracks on northbound. The high trying to build in some better weather, but still kind of an ugly day for the Muskegon, Chicago, Paducah area, St. Louis. A lot of these areas had highs only in the 30s today. With that, some light rain. More rainfall in Arizona. We've had nearly an inch of rainfall today around the Phoenix area. That low is winds of rain coming in, really packing a wallop. We've had winds to 62 miles per hour.
Report. We now take you live to the forecast. Good evening, I'm Mike Bono with a special report on 2 storms affecting the East Coast. One is bearing down on New England and parts of Long Island, and the other in the southeast this morning was wreaking some havoc. We take you to the southeast, to the North Carolina coast. This was the scene from Kitty Hawk this morning. The slow-moving low-pressure system will continue to batter the coasts of North and South Carolina. Northeast winds reaching 40 to 45 miles per hour, and seas near 15 feet have been occurring through the morning. There are reports of beach erosion, but it'll be greatly reduced this evening as the tide's going out. However, beach erosion and ocean overwash will likely occur again tonight as the high tide returns. In fact, it could turn into some sound side flooding by tomorrow. In addition to coastal problems, wind-driven heavy rain will continue across southeast North Carolina this evening. Flash flood watch right into South Carolina, where numerous roads have been closed due to flooding, and even some bridges have been washed out. Everyone along the southeast coast should remain tuned to the Weather Channel and local advisories on this stormy weather. Yesterday, as the storm began to move into the Carolinas, the Coast Guard assisted a 75-foot fishing vessel which was taking in water 12 miles off Cape Lookout, North Carolina. At the time, seas were reported 8 to 10 feet with winds at 25 miles per hour. A rescue helicopter lowered pumps to the vessel as a Marine Corps helicopter stood by. The Coast Guard escorted the vessel with 2 people aboard to Beaufort Harbor. Well, that's the latest on our coastal storms right here. You want to stay tuned. We have a storm of hurricane strength in some localized areas bearing down on southern New England, and that storm continues to batter the southeast coast. Now to the studio.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Again, our upper air pattern, a real convoluted mess. We continue to see one low in the Carolinas. That's the one that Mike mentioned brought 7 inches of rainfall near the Florence area. The other low that's been offshore Cape Cod is getting a lot stronger over the past 4 to 5 hours. The barometer down about 29.4 inches now in Nantucket. And we've had winds at Nantucket Island gusting as high as 78 miles per hour. This system is probably going to dumbbell its way back in towards the northwest, so the main brunt of it coming in between, say, eastern Long Island and the Narragansett Bay area over the next 3 to 4 hours. Again, the low itself tracking northwest, and this low in the Carolinas eventually will strengthen up more and track right up the coast. And there's yet another player. You really can't see it, but there's a low back here in Indiana diving southward. That's kind of helping these to dumbbell their way more off to the north and northwest than they would normally be expected to do. Here's some data for you. We had a report about 4 to 5 hours ago. An offshore buoy roughly due south of Martha's Vineyard and due east of Ocean City, Maryland, right to the west of the actual storm center, had a gust to 83 miles per hour. So it tells you something about the formidable nature of that northern low. The other low itself, right over the Gulf Stream, that will likely strengthen up as well. Let's get a look at it now. You can see it very clearly. There's our one low pinwheeling off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. The other low you can see developing more of an eye, if you will, an area of subsidence near the center. And you can see how it's sort of backing its way in, moving off towards the west-northwest. We think it'll continue to wobble its way that direction for a while. May eventually turn a little more northbound, but again, the area from Cape Cod all the way to central Long Island could really get hammered. You're right now getting pasted by very gusty winds. We've had winds at Plum Island off the coast of Massachusetts as high as 62 miles per hour. And these spiral bands are making their way westbound. You can see almost a center on the screen here, roughly about 200 miles to the southeast of Montauk Point. Zooming in around New York City westbound, rather quiet. Philadelphia, any rain very light, but still the big rains with that band. That is where the very gusty winds are coming on in, anywhere from Hingham and Hull, Mass, down into the Scituate area, right on down through to about Fall River, New Bedford. And again, Providence gusting to 51 now. There's another even stronger band heading your way, moving that direction at about 15 miles per hour. Gusts as high as 80, maybe 90 miles per hour on the coast expected overnight tonight. Storm warnings up, meaning
weather. Hurricane-force winds, heavy rain, and power outages are widespread now in the Boston area. Another storm in the southeast today causing problems out on the beaches, and has really been the big story here. It's like a hurricane in December. Out at Nantucket before they shut down, 81-mile-an-hour winds, trees down there with power outages. Down at Buzzards Bay at Falmouth, wind gusts to almost 80 miles an hour, and just during the past hour at Bridgeport and Groton in Connecticut and at Boston's Logan Airport, we've had wind gusts to over 50 miles an hour. It will continue all night. Take a look at the storms. 2 in the east, 1 in the southwest, and a front coming onto the west coast. We've had rain earlier today and last night in Phoenix. This is moving out through the plains, but kind of drying out. Snows are pretty much tapering off now in the San Juans of Colorado. New front coming on in with an area of storminess right there, and that's going to have implications for Christmas Day in Los Angeles and points east to Phoenix and eventually into Dallas by the first of the week. But on the East Coast, that's our main concern tonight and Christmas Eve day. Storm number 1 now spinning away and rolling right in towards the southern sections of New England. Storm 2 is off the southeast coast. We think they're going to kind of gel together into one area of low pressure later on tonight and on Christmas Eve day. This is how it looks now on the weather map. A lot of isobars. These are lines of equal barometric pressure, and just imagine the winds blowing around these areas of storminess here in the northern hemisphere, blowing counterclockwise, just the opposite in the southern hemisphere. The winds are really coming on shore, bringing in the moisture. Earlier tonight we had hail, we had lightning around South Weymouth. Very unstable situation. On the satellite photo, it looked like we were getting an eye trying to develop as the convection came on shore. A break in the rain through North Carolina up through the middle Atlantic as the winds are like this, and that's kind of cutting off the onshore flow around Cape Hatteras, but even there winds have been gusting to around 40 miles an hour. We've got the advisories continuing, storm warnings or gale warnings all the way from Savannah all the way into down East Maine. The worst area right now is right in here from Long Island Sound to the south shore of southern New England, around Providence, Buzzards Bay, Narragansett Bay, the Boston area. You are getting hammered as the winds will continue all night. You've got a high wind warning there, also a high wind warning for New York City. And with the winds coming on shore, that pushes the water up, and as the tide tries to go out, it can't, because it's got to kind of beat back that wind and that water flow, and we're going to have some more problems at time of high tide tonight and Saturday, overnight tonight and Saturday, Cape Henlopen all the way down to Little River Inlet. Here's the radar, and this is the first wave of rainfall right here. This is what kicked in those almost 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts around Boston. That's moved on in back to the west, but notice there's a sharp edge between where it's raining and not raining. We don't count on any rain in Burlington and points south and west of Syracuse, and no snow. Up on Mount Washington right now, temperatures are in the 20s, but even there we're not counting on the snow. The rain's continuing to flood on in across the Cape area, Chatham getting heavy rain and wind. The first batch of rain moving out, that's where we had the wind gust in Essex County to almost 80 miles an hour. But still, waves and waves of moisture. You can see them pulsating on shore from the Atlantic. So you're not out of the woods yet, and it's going to stay windy right on through tomorrow. It's going to be Monday before the weather returns to something a little bit more typical for this time of the year as far as the wind dying down. Tonight in New York City, we've had some rain, a lot of wind, just checking LaGuardia, and out on the island at Islip, winds have been gusting over the past hour or two between 40 and 45 miles an hour. In the Carolinas,
Your local 36-hour forecast from the National Weather Service. Extended forecast. Coming up, more local weather updates here on the Weather Channel. Watching the Weather Channel for accurate forecasts at your convenience. Weather you can always turn to.
Well, good morning. It's time now for our storm update. It has been a warm and mild year so far, and I got a feel for a lot of folks, that's for sure, especially in the Northeast. But I will send a little snow for you here as we let you know what Santa's reindeer have to say about this. And sure enough, folks, big Merry Christmas from us here at the Weather Channel and all of those that happen to share with the red-nosed reindeer. All right, big winds in the Northeast. Hold on, Santa. 84 miles an hour at Nantucket Island. Holy cow. Falmouth, 78 miles an hour. Chatham at 72. Providence, 72. They got wind damage and power outages this morning across parts of southern New England with our double-barrel low-pressure system. That one, the first one, is now moving on shore and heading on off toward the west. With it, the rain continues, however, and we still have another batch of heavy rain developing just offshore of Boston as we speak. The secondary low developing east of North Carolina. The winds continue today. They're dying down a little bit, but we still have some 30 to 50 mile per hour winds up and through here, and that's why they still got the old gale, actually storm warnings cranking from the mouth of the Merrimack River on down toward Watch Hill in Rhode Island, and from south of Virginia Beach to Cape Lookout, coastal flood warnings as the wind and rain, or wind and waves, I should say, are still bashing the Carolina coast. Our main low is this one, and it heads off to the north and west today. With it, the wind and the rain continue. We don't expect any more 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but we do expect this next low, instead of coming up and in, to come up and out. So good news in that regard, because we won't have the disastrous wind and rain that we dealt with the first one. Out west, though, a new area of low pressure coming in with this. Plenty of mountain snow for you. Check it out, the Sierra, the southern mountains of California, yeah, right up around Big Bear, the rim country of Arizona, and even into southern Colorado, looking at a little bit of snow. Let's take into the Northeast, examine this storm a little bit further here with the radar satellite overlay. And there's no doubt in my mind that this thing took
around Glens Falls, New York, and we're looking at some more heavy rainfall in bands beginning to back their way westward around Boston and Worcester. It is still coming down, and very strong gusty northeasterly winds around Boston and Worcester continue along the coast of Maine at times, better than 50 miles per hour. We're looking at storm warnings still in effect right now from the Watch Hill up towards the Merrimack River. This storm will be a slow mover. It's going to stick around for another 24 hours. Things should be much better by early.